arguments here, but I'm going to say this, right? I'm a Democrat, and I think that the worst thing from the George W. Bush presidency wasn't the Patriot Act, it wasn't the weapons of mass destruction, it was the fact that he was able to appoint conservative jurists to the Supreme Court that have affected jurisprudence in America for years and years to come, right? Citizens United, corporations of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but corporations definitely are not people where I come from. And so when you start to look at what this administration in Washington has been able to do, appointing federal judges to the bench with no experience on the bench to lifetime judicial positions. These are the things that people need to understand and figure out, that everything has, like the laws of physics, that everything has an equal and opposite reaction. Even if you don't see it, trust me, it's there.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/AHTT. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. After the Bucks strike, protest, whatever you want to call it, there was talk. I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter. Some people are like you and me, I had the same reaction as you. I'm like, look, I like what they're doing here. I don't know how long this is going to last, but I like it. There was some talk saying to people, well, what is this going to do? What kind of change and impact is this going to have? And we saw some things, right? We saw that these players got the owners to be a little bit more accountable and have the 29 teams have these arenas open for polling come November to be used as poll sites. I think personally, that is no small feat. That's a major thing. You talked just earlier about the importance of voting and getting people out to vote and having people vote on things no matter how big or small it is. What do you like about what we saw come out of this strike protest in the NBA? I think some people are poo-pooing it, pushing it to the side, but I think it's no small potatoes. This is huge in getting these arenas open for people to come and vote.
I think it's incredible. I think sometimes we are our own worst enemies. We allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good, right? As opposed and I'm not saying settle, right? I would never tell anybody to settle. I don't tell my daughters to settle. I don't tell anybody like you should shoot for the stars, right? But if you look at what was accomplished in some of the other things about a continued ongoing investment in communities of color, in these impacted communities that they're going to get in addition to this, right? In addition to that, I don't think that's a small feat. And the reality is, I like to ask those who, like, okay, if not this, then what?
Then what? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So exactly what you wanted them to do. You wanted them to turn this down and get what? Well, and most of the time, 99 times out of 100, when somebody's doing that, they're not going to be able to tell you what it is that they would have asked for. They just know it's not enough. Well, what is it then? Well, it's not enough. Well, that's not an answer.
You know what that's like? You know what that's like? That's like the people who, whenever LeBron James says something, they bring up China, not because they actually care about China, but they're just deflecting because they just want to bring up China in order to invalidate or feel like they're invalidating everything else he's saying, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, and it's just real disappointing when you see people turn to that and do that. So with that being said, I think a lot of other talk that comes out of this, Jamaal, and what we've seen over the last couple of years is, okay, police reform is needed. I know you're somebody that's really, really pushing for that, and that we need to look at ways legislation can be passed to help certain issues of police brutality and police reform and anti-racism and all these things that we need. What do you see in politics right now, especially at the local level, including, and you could bring up some of the stuff that you're working on and you're doing and you're fighting for. What are you seeing being done that you can let people know that, to go to Bryan's point, we can't just rely on the athletes. We need people like Jamaal Bailey. We need you.
Yeah.
So what is it that you and others are doing out there to fight and push some legislation forward?
So we got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? So one of the things is the police reform. You heard the conversation about the phrase 50A,
yes,
right? Repeal of 50A. That was my bill. It was to repeal subsection 50A of the Civil Rights Law, and what that did is serve as an impenetrable bar to getting the disciplinary records of officers who were accused of wrongdoing. Right. I live in the Bronx, Northeast Bronx, where Marley Graham was shot and killed by officers here in the North Bronx. Constance Malcolm, an incredible woman, fought tooth and nail to try to get those records, but she didn't get those records if not for a leak, if not for some sort of happenstance. You're the victim of brutality. You shouldn't be get that stuff based upon happenstance. You should get it because it's the right thing to do, and it fosters public trust. It allows us in communities who've often been over-policed to know who is it that's policing us, right? In any other profession, if you have this many disciplinary records, strikes on your record, you're dealt with and taken care of, and now that maybe you're disciplined, maybe your behavior is corrected. But this isn't happening because we don't know who's doing it. They're continuing to be on the force, and that is continuously leading to a distrust from people in the community and members of law enforcement. Like, you go into these schools, you talk to the kids. I mentioned it before. Like, 9 times out of 10, you ask the kid what they want to do. They in that top 3 is doctor, lawyer, basketball player, cop. Right? They're still saying that they want to be police officers. So where does the disconnect happen? Disconnect happens when officers that are not held accountable continue to come into our communities and over-police us for the sake of over-policing. So we need to know who those folks are. Special prosecutor bill. When there's a police-involved killing, right?
Yeah.
You want an impartial individual, and that's not to cast aspersions against any individual district attorney, but the attorney general, as the law enforcement officer in the state, has jurisdiction over it. So now Letitia James, our first African American woman AG. In the Bronx, we have a first African American DA statewide in Darcel Clark. So it's important that we continue to break these barriers as we go up. But the point is with that is that they have the ability to investigate these killings. The anti-chokehold bill, the Eric Garner bill, which is different from the New York City one, that passed in the state unanimously. And that passed 62-0 in the New York State Senate, a House that is often divided based upon partisanship. Every Republican and every Democrat in the New York State Senate voted for Senator Brian Benjamin's bill to ban chokehold at the state level and to put a penalty on it. It's a realization that, look, whatever side of the aisle you sit on, right, you have to make there's a recognition that we've got to do more when it comes to making sure that we reform our police departments and restoring public trust and accountability to the equation.
Yeah.
Do you think that over the course of this year that we've actually legitimately have gotten closer to some sort of reform in these areas that we're discussing? Do you think that we've actually made legitimate progress over the last 6 months or however long it's been?
Absolutely. I think that in the second week of June, we passed these bills, and the governor signed them into law. So we passed a package of 10 bills. I was a sponsor on 4 of these bills, including 58 special prosecutor, a weapons discharge bill, and a bill that was dedicated to the life of Andrew Kearse, a Bronx man who was refused medical attention while in custody. And again, these are things that you would think would, like, why wouldn't this be permitted? Why would this be permitted? It would create a right of civil action so that in the event that an officer failed to try to get, somebody who's in their custody. So, Brian, in substance, we've been able to do that. But the reason we've been able to do that, as much as I think I'm a pretty good elected official, it's not just because of me.
Right.
It is because the people, they saw that knee on the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the collective knee of Black America, and they said, we are tired. We've been telling you about this for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
But by the grace of God and by the grace of video evidence, we have undisputable evidence, because in the past, some people, it was like a throw context out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eric Garner, look, hey, he was choking him out, but maybe he was resisting, or maybe he was selling cigarettes, or whatever cockamamie excuse they gave. That's why they murdered that man in Staten Island, right?
Right.
This one, we saw evidence from the store. We saw evidence when George Floyd was on the ground, when they brought him to at no point was he resisting. He was asking for help. There were bystanders recording it from multiple angles. We had the perfect storm of indisputable evidence that said, y'all can't look past this one now. Now do something.
Right.
And as legislators, we are charged to do what the people's will is, whether we like it or not. I happen to be very passionate about this, so I'm happy that we did it. But as legislators, our number one job is to serve the constituencies that we represent, whether we feel good about it or not. And our collective constituencies said, enough is enough. Do it. Do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about up here. We just feel like yes, people have been fighting for this for a long time, but this year more than any other year that at least I've experienced, it just feels a lot different than in years past. So